This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The drifters hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the cinephile, unseen, unseen. The veils twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 328. I am your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here for you is going to be my Women Appreciation number 14. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here, the ones I'm pairing up doesn't make the greatest for what I'm trying to do here, but Slumber Party Massacre 2021, this is the remake. This one actually has a woman director, woman writer. That's true for every film in this series, franchise, whatever you want to call it. But I'll pair this up with Whistle. This one only works because we do have some women in very prominent positions in this film, so that's going to be the two reviews that I have paired up here and kind of what my through line is going to be. And then for mini reviews, I have my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch of Billy the Kid vs. Dracula. I gave a watch to The Strangers Chapter 2, just to be prepared if I end up trying to decide to watch Chapter 3 at some point. I have a screener for Bad Voodoo. I got to check out Class of 1999 2, The Substitute. And then in celebration of Friday the 13th, I checked out the remake of that one as well. And then I also have here for you one episode of The Twilight Zone and 3 episodes of Wednesday as Jamie and I finished that. So I don't think there's anything else to do here for this intro outside of saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Have you ever had the burning desire to start a business and didn't know how? Are you elbow deep in your business but feel one of the 4 hurdles of stop: imposter syndrome, perfectionism, failure, and fear holding you back? If you have ever come across any of these, then The Undiscovered Entrepreneur Get Across the Start Line is a podcast you should be listening to right now. Listen to new entrepreneurs that are just getting started like you. Learn from seasoned entrepreneurs that have been there at the start line and have advice for you to learn from. This will be your first stop in your entrepreneur adventure. Join your host, Scoob, as we take you through the 4 hurdles of stop, find your zone of genius, and get you across the start line. Start your entrepreneur adventure right now on The Undiscovered Entrepreneur Get Across the Start Line. Available on all major platforms, or go to stan.store/Scoob. Go to stan.store/SKOOB. Let's get across the start line together. Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
And for my first mini review is going to be Billy the Kid vs. Dracula from 1966, directed by William Bodine. This is written by Carl K. Hittleman. This is starring John Carradine, Chuck Courtney, and Melinda Plowman. This is an action drama horror western film from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 3.9 on IMDb and a 2.2 on Letterboxd, for our synopsis being. Dracula travels to the American Old West in the 1800s, intent on making a young and beautiful female ranch owner his vampire bride. Her fiancé, the reformed outlaw Billy the Kid, finds out about it and rushes to save her. So Dracula, this one's going to be portrayed by the great Carradine, and then Billy the Kid's going to be Chuck Courtney, and then his fiancé is Betty Bentley, portrayed by Melinda Casey. She also goes by Melinda Plowman. So it's kind of one of those things where I think things might have gotten changed here and there. Yeah, regardless, just kind of wanted to acknowledge what was kind of going on there. So this is a film that I didn't necessarily know about until I started working my way through the Horror Show Guide Encyclopedia. So that's where I was kind of, figuring out different movies and everything. This one, the title made me chuckle. I had to figure this was going to be a low-budget effort. And I was kind of looking through the cast list this time around, watching it with a more critical eye and realizing that we actually have some pretty famous people here who would work in westerns, maybe not always as the lead. Then you also have Carradine, who cut his teeth in Universal before being in films like Shockwaves and The Howling as he got older. I'd only ever seen this one once, so I was intrigued to revisit this as a scouring through the sixes. So where I'm going to go ahead and start is that this is an interesting and creative premise. Though it makes changes like having Dracula move around in the daytime and not really truly acknowledging it, I actually don't believe that was in the source material. I know in films like Nosferatu, they use that sunlight is a way to kill vampires. I don't recall if that's, like I said, I don't recall if that's in the source material or not. Regardless, seeing this classic villain in a different time period was enjoyable. Having a historic villain like Billy the Kid being our hero works as well, especially since the reason is due to the love of Betty. I can work with this premise. Let's look at the positives. I do love this built-in issue that Billy the Kid is a notorious outlaw. He hasn't been punished, and he's hoping to fly under the radar working here. The problem then becomes that Ben Dooley, portrayed by Harry Carey Jr., and his crew who work on the ranch don't like him. Billy must be careful and not draw too much attention to himself, since no one knows Dracula's true identity for a long stretch because he actually poses as... Let me kind of actually give that little backstory here. Betty's mother is Mary Ann, portrayed by Marjorie Bennett. Her husband passed away. So her brother of James Underhill, portrayed by William Forrest, he's actually moving to help out run this ranch with her, but Betty's never actually met her uncle, and Dracula is posing as him. So this all creates issues for Billy. This does well in building the tension, some of it. Now, an issue I originally had is that we have this woman of Ava Oster, portrayed by Virginia Christine. Her and her husband, who is Franz, portrayed by Walter Janowitz, they're being taken in by Betty. That I'm fine there, but Ava believes that her daughter was killed by a vampire, and her daughter is going to be Lisa, portrayed by Hanny Landman. This works in its favor to explain things quicker because Ava and her family seem to be from Germany, from the old country. Since this has a small budget, that helps to kind of move things along. Dracula doesn't like the Osters and wants them to be sent away. It's playing up that they're where they are, so they know this folklore and they're bringing that with them. I actually enjoyed that to not bog things down. So we also have a theme here about clashing mythologies. We have Dracula representing European Gothic horror with Billy the Kid and the American frontier. There's a redemption tale for Billy here. The problem is that it doesn't truly pay off or pay for his sins, in my opinion, unless you see this ordeal with Dracula as that. Dracula can also be seen as a wolf in sheep's clothing. Let's then shift over to the acting performances. We actually have a decent cast. Carradine is effective as Dracula, and he has this good villainous stare that's aided by this interesting filmmaking technique. Courtney, however, is a little bit too stoic as Billy. He lacks that ruggedness, and he also doesn't have the charisma. Casey is appealing as his believably naive character. Christine Janowitz and Landman convincingly portray this first family attacked. Bennett and Forrest successfully set the scene, and then you have the adventure and character actor like Carey who appears in this supporting role. So the cast, like I said, fine. All it's left to be filmmaking. I do think the cinematography and framing are also kind of in the same vein there. It hides a good amount, reducing it to interior shots. We also have inside of this cave, which is a good touch since it's supposed to be a former silver mine. When we do see the outside Wild West stuff, that all worked well. There isn't much in the way of effects. The rubber bat was better than I've actually seen things that would come out after this, so, credit there. I did like this use of a red light to put on Dracula when he's using his persuasion. Other than that, the soundtrack didn't necessarily stand out. So in conclusion, this is a fun if flawed, low-budget genre mashup that succeeds mainly on its strength of its bizarre premise and the presence of Carradine's performance. While the film struggles with pacing, character depth for its lead, and minimal special effects, it offers an interesting thematic collision between old world mythology and the American frontier. Ultimately, it's a piece of 1960s B-movie horror schlock that delivers exactly what its title promises, making it a noteworthy curiosity for dedicated fans of oddball cinema, even if it doesn't quite rise to being a genuinely good film. So my rating here, I've actually came up on this one because I actually realized it wasn't as bad as I remembered. So my rating for Billy the Kid vs. Dracula, I give a 4.5 out of 10. Then up next, I have The Strangers Chapter 2. This came out last year. I missed it, so I wanted to at least catch up, and the reason being, I'll get here into a second, but this is directed by Rennie Harlan, written by Alan Friedland and Alan R. Cohen, and then obviously giving credit here as well to Brian Bertino for creating the characters. This stars Madeline Pesch, Gabrielle Basso, and Emma Horvath. This is a slasher whodunit horror mystery film this is a co-production of Spain, United States, Slovakia, Canada, and United Kingdom. This is currently sitting on a 4.7 on IMDb and a 1.8 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being: left stranded in a small town with no way out, Maya, portrayed by Pesch, must once again face terror courtesy of 3 deadly killers. And those ones are going to be Dollface, Scarecrow, and Pinup Girl, I think is the names. So this one, I'll be honest, I missed in theaters, and when doing my end-of-year roundup, I avoided it. Not necessarily avoided it, I thought there was other things that I wanted to see over this. So I was a big fan of the original. It has diminishing returns for me, I will admit that, but I still think it's great. Pray at Night is an interesting follow-up to that I enjoyed. Chapter 1 was fine. The reviews weren't overly favorable for this one or that one either. Since Chapter 3, at the time of writing and recording this, is out, I might end up checking it out here for 2026, so I wanted to be prepared, but this is a Voyage Through the Fives watch, so I wanted to make sure that. And where I'm going to start is that this isn't a bad film. Its main issue is that it's a middle entry of a planned trilogy. It struggles to stand alone. It successfully gets viewers up to speed if they miss Chapter 1, so I will give credit for that. This focuses on Maya in a prolonged cat-and-mouse game with 3 killers. We also get more background on one of them and a little bit of the other ones, but this one actually reveals who one of them actually is. It isn't essential, but it helps flesh out a story for a trilogy. Let's start with positives. The planned trilogy successfully brought back all the actors. That's more likely due to being filmed all together. A perk is that it picks up immediately where the previous film ended, though it relies on necessary flashbacks to fill in for Chapter 1 details, so that works, like I said. I did think that perhaps one or too many, not ruinous though, there's some good set pieces, including the hospital. That one reminded me and other people that I've heard of Halloween 2. The farm, woods, and apartment, though, those are also good set pieces. Something else that I want to explore is that, like I said, we revealed one of the killers here. A fumble there is that it made it obvious very early in this film. Like, I literally did the Leo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where I set up and pointed, knowing exactly what they were doing. I did want to give credit to the previous chapters for making everybody in the town suspicious, so this one and part 1. They still could have characters here be involved without violating continuity. What's interesting, though, is that we go into the past to show, I'm guessing, all 3 of these killers as children. We also see a horrific event that happens with a game and helps to kind of explain Tamara a little bit and why they ask for her when they knock. This fills in that story without too much of a filler, I would say. The other themes that I need to include here involve Maya. We see her evolution into a final girl. This is her dealing with nature, both weather and an interesting animal attack sequence. I do enjoy that this continues to build on the paranoia for her. She doesn't know who she can trust. There's an interesting scene in a car where she sees different things that trigger that she's gone through already, hearkening to like PTSD. And there's a tough mourning under pressure thing with what happened to her fiance in the previous film. So the acting, overall, effective. Pesch is solid as our lead, showing good character growth as she struggles with trusting others post-trauma. Then we also have some interesting characters we got to introduce here, like Brooke Lena Johnson is Nurse Danica. There is her, I think, girlfriend. I don't necessarily know if that fully gets explored there, but Florina Claire is Chris. Then we also have Basso is portraying Gregory. And then we also have Milo Callahan, something like that. He's Wayne. I think they're interesting and potentially untrustworthy supporting characters. Thought Horvath fit in her role well. We also have Gutierrez back, and he is going to be, I want to make sure I get his first name and make sure I give him full. Froy Gutierrez is Ryan. He's mostly through flashbacks. We do get one real kind of interesting scene with him. We also, a big issue that I have here is we underuse the talented Richard Brake. Now, his look, mannerisms, and past roles, they make it difficult where he always looks suspicious because he's always been such a villain. I just wish they could use him more. I'm hoping they do in Chapter 3. Also, then be filmmaking. I'll first credit the cinematography and framing. What they did there was good. They play with the tension of being caught. This works well with the cat and mouse concept of the film. We also get some brutal effects at times. That was something I appreciated. I'm guessing there was some CGI used there. I didn't have any major issues, though. The biggest problem for me is just a lack of stakes. Knowing that there's another film coming and a certain character has to, survive, making characters safe, and this just makes it feel longer than it is. So, in conclusion, this is a competent, if slightly protracted, middle chapter that successfully bridged the narrative gap for the planned trilogy. While it falters slightly due to standalone limitations and telegraphs the killer's identity way too early, it excels as a character development for Maya and offers intriguing, albeit unnecessarily, glimpses into the stranger's origins. The solid acting and effective technical execution, particularly the cinematography, maintain the franchise's tense atmosphere, ultimately despite feeling less urgent due to the predetermined safety net of a third installment. It serves its purpose by setting the stage for what is hopefully a more conclusive and impactful Chapter 3. So my rating here for The Strangers Chapter 2, I gave it a 6 out of 10. Then I got a screener to check out Bad Voodoo from 2026. Now, this is directed by Andrew Adler and Andre Hepburn. Now, the writer is David Fern, and Hepburn actually helped come up with the story. This stars Christina Moody, Justin Genna, and Manny Perez. This is a horror film that is, let me double check. This is from the United States. Currently sitting, actually, not enough ratings for an average on IMDb as of yet. Same thing over on Letterboxd, but I would say about a 2.5 to a 3-star movie over there with a synopsis beam. Escaped convicts face horrors after taking a woman hostage in her home. As a plot emerges, they struggle against dark forces for survival. So we'll go ahead and say the woman they take hostage is Abigail Bellamy, portrayed by Christina Moody. And then the criminals are going to be Doc, who is Perez. There is Smooth, portrayed by Justin Lombard. We have Nonzo, portrayed by Alex Joseph Pires. And then the last one's Nice, portrayed by Genna. So this one I got the chance to see thanks to Alex from Simply Legendary Publicity, who sent it over as the press release. I was able to get a screen early. Now, outside of figuring out that this was a 2026 horror film, I did come in blind. Seeing the title did intrigue me since voodoo is an element that I enjoyed when used properly in horror. I also like that we have independent cinema. I like to use that to help round out my end-of-year list. So where I'm going to go ahead and jump in is that what I like about this one, and there's some issues as well, but let's get to the positives. I find it creative to have this Caucasian couple that decides to use voodoo to get revenge on these criminals who all but got a slap on the wrist for an accident that killed them. Now, what they end up doing, though, is they killed this couple's daughters of Amelia, portrayed by Annalise Curry, and then the other one is Rebecca by Isabella Leone. It feels a bit undeveloped here, though. There was a car accident. I'm not fully sure why the couple believes that there's more here, unless there might have been something here about there was drugs being used, but I'll acknowledge I might have missed something, and that might have helped make more sense. Now that it's set up, let me delve into the use of voodoo in this film. There's the usual conceit that you have to believe it for it to work. That's not the case here. Actually, Doc multiple times pushes back on things, and it's still doing stuff. I do like that using voodoo dolls allows Abby to control men that would otherwise overpower her. There's an element here that she gets scolded by this voodoo priest that is helping her of Haugens, portrayed by Jimmy C. Jules. He believes that she's violated their agreement that they have. This ultimately doesn't amount to much, so I'm not entirely sure why it was included outside of maybe just padding out the runtime a little bit more. But the use of these rituals makes for good visuals, and I give credit there. Something else to give credit to would be this grieving parents element who are using a ritual for revenge. That's something I could connect with. Because, if anything ever happened to my children, I could see myself getting revenge. It's wild to hear John does in order to get his revenge. Man, it's a bit contrived. It makes me think of things like Prison Break. Since a movie, I can overlook it to an extent. I do like the character later factors in, back into your ritual that we saw very early on. The secrets that characters harbor is good since it all needs to come to light. The basic story using a revenge ritual it's a little bit different from what you normally would see. So Moody and Genna lead as grieving parents. Curry and Leone create eerie scenes, messing with the parents' minds as manifestations, leaving their true nature uncertain. We also get to see them through flashbacks. I would also say Perez, Paris, and Lombard as the criminals are good. They work well for what was needed. John Fiore and Allison Klinman, they get involved later as detectives. And then we also here have Jules and there's another one, Angie Lubin. They also play solid roles as things kind of develop. The acting was acceptable for a film like this. And there's actually somebody I forgot here, Scott Setterquist, who plays Marcus. I thought he kind of worked well for developing little plot points. And then it kind of actually raising tension a little bit too, because he keeps butting in and it actually makes people tense. All it's left then to be filmmaking aspects. I love the setting. This normal facade conceals Abby's creepy rituals. The solid effective cinematography and framing support decent, though limited effects. Later elements like realistic blood, sound design improve the film. My main issue is the slow pacing. It was just hard to connect with the characters and invest in the events that are happening. It isn't poorly made by any stretch, so I'll give credit there. In conclusion, this is a unique approach to a revenge horror subgenre by intertwining a home invasion narrative with the spiritual weight of voodoo rituals. While the film offers creative visuals, a solid premise involving grieving parents seeking justice, and a committed cast, it struggles with pacing issues and underdeveloped plot points concerning the initial tragedy. Despite these shortcomings, the film is competently made and provides an interesting, albeit slow-burning, independent cinematic experience that explores how far desperation can drive poorly for people for vengeance. So my rating for Bad Voodoo, I gave this one a 5 out of 10. Then up next, I have Class of 1999 2, The Substitute. This is from 1994, directed by Spiro Razatos. This is written by Mark Sevi. It's starring Sasha Mitchell, Caitlin Dulani, and Nick Cassavetes. This is an action, horror, sci-fi thriller film that is from, I believe, the United States, yes. And this is currently sitting on a 4.4 on IMDb and a 2.3 on Letterboxd, where a synopsis being. The substitute teacher of the future is a robot who answers spitwads with bullets. He'll clean up the gang situation at the school, too, if a government agent doesn't catch him first. So for this one here, the substitute teacher is going to be John Bolin, portrayed by Mitchell. And then this is one that I learned about when I had figured out that there were films that preceded it. I believe that it popped up on a podcast, so it went on a list for something to check out. I've moved this up since I wanted to finish the franchise according to Letterboxd, which is Class of 1984, Class of 1999, and then this. And then knowing all that was, kind of follow up there, is that I saw this featured Cassavetes, an actor and a director that I've seen in other things. This also doubles as a Foray Through the Fours watch as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start would be that this isn't a bad follow-up to the previous film. It is interesting that the first film in the series is 84, which is a grounded exploitation film looking at teens becoming too unruly and gangs taking over schools where teachers try to do what they can, doing the right things. But the follow-up in this film goes sci-fi, with making that problem much more worse than the original. Then you have cyborg teachers that are taking it to the extreme to take care of it. And this is an interesting reveal as to this one here, and it's a little bit different, and I did appreciate that. So for the most part here, the narrative is following Jenna McKenzie. She's a teacher, and she's portrayed by Caitlin Dulani. Now, this hints at a potential sexual assault that we never fully get explored, but how it handles works well. We get enough of it. So the central conflict is one that no one believes that Sanders is guilty, and this is the one that she's actually going to go to testify against in court. He's portrayed by Gregory West. Now, her boyfriend of Emmett, who is Cassavetes, he believes her, but everybody keeps advising Jenna to abandon the fight, thinking for her safety. Only John encourages her to persevere, though his methods are extreme. But Dulani was suitable for her role, and the theme of misogyny remains relevant element even today. So let's look at this film as a sequel. I only put this that way because we're carrying elements over from the previous movie. It does feel a little bit tacked on, though, if I'm going to be honest. So we also have this person here of G.D. Ash, who is portrayed by Rick Hill. He's the agent that was in the synopsis. Now, he fills us in about what the teachers did in the installment prior. It was believed that all the cyborgs were taken care of. This string of murders has Ash believing otherwise. There's a reveal that didn't shock me when it came up. It made things that we saw throughout this make more sense. So the story elements here worked well for me. Something else that I want to explore is that this feels like the youth of America has revolted. It's more prevalent in the earlier two films. Here we kind of have a couple gangs that are making issues. John takes out one of them to start the film, and then he's dealing with Sanders and his crew for a bulk of this runtime. It could also be more of like seeing things on a micro level instead of the larger picture. I do like the spree is cleaning up the schools that John hits, and then that's, how people can kind of track him here. So the other theme that I want to kind of touch on here, some themes that is, would be like the failure of the educational system. Like I said, though, it isn't portrayed as bad here. There's some opposing methodologies. One is using extreme violence to answer back to the gangs and corruption of the youth. This shows the cycle of violence that cannot answer violence with more violence, as it doesn't fix the core issue. Zero tolerance isn't always the answer either. It plays with the concept as well of dehumanization of authority. So let's shift over here and talk about the acting performances. Mitchell surprised me moving from a TV goofball in the show Step by Step to a stoic violent machine. A good fit physically there. Dulani is good as well. I thought her character of Jenna is interesting. She has a regression that you don't always necessarily see and it doesn't always work. Her push to punish Sanders results in escalating retaliation. Cassavetes works as her significant other. He falls in with society in wanting her to give up her fight. And then we also here have we have Wes. I thought he was solid, along with Diego Serrano, who plays Ice. Him and the other gang members are fine, though they're kind of caricatures. They fit the exploitation theme. Also want to give credit here to Jack Knight, who was Sheriff Tom Yost, and the rest of the cast were adequate. All that'd be left would be filmmaking aspects. It was notable that this one didn't have as much of a budget. The writing isn't as strong either. The cinematography and framing were fine. It almost has like a TV movie feel. The effects that we got were good. They go brutal at times. Limited blood looked real enough. It also have the effects like used for like shotguns or gunshots as well. Other than that, the music and sound design fit what was needed. If anything, it's just a bit slow and it struggles to hold my attention at times. So in conclusion, this is an adequate, if less polished, continuation of the sci-fi action elements introduced in the previous film. While the budget constraints and writing weaknesses are apparent, the core concept of a robotic substitute teacher delivering extreme justice remains compelling. Mitchell delivers a surprisingly effective performance as the stoic John Bolin, and then the film successfully weaves in a relevant social commentary through Jenna's storyline, highlighting the themes of misogyny and the failure of conventional authority. Despite struggling with pacing, it's a solid entry for fans of low-budget exploitation cinema and provides a satisfying, albeit brutal conclusion to the loose trilogy's exploration of zero-tolerance policies gone awry. So my rating here, then, for Class of 1999 2, The Substitute, I give this one a 6 out of 10. I checked this out on Tubi if you are curious. And for the last feature here that I'm going to review is going to be Friday the 13th. This is the remake from 2009. This is directed by Marcus Nispel. Now, the screenplay is written by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, while we also have here the story being done between Shannon Swift and Mark Wheaton. And then Victor Miller is given credit to the characters that were created by him. And then this is starred in Jared Padalecki, Amanda Ragetti, and Derek Mears. So this is there's a lot of kind of genres and like subgenres here. So we have slasher, horror, splatter, suspense, mystery, teen, whodunit, mystery thriller film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.5 on IMDb and a 2.6 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis. A group of young adults visit the area near Camp Crystal Lake, where they soon discover the mysterious Jason Voorhees and his deadly intentions. So, Jason in this one being portrayed by Mears. So, I originally saw this in the theater with my buddy, and if you're listening there, D-Mags, yeah, it was you. This would have been back in college, and I know that I saw this when it hit DVD, and I picked it up. Now, I haven't watched this in a long time. This was the next one up in the Blu-ray set that I hadn't visited yet, and I was excited to watch it since it had been so long, and I've never actually watched it with a critical eye before. So I'm going to start is that I was chatting with a friend on Discord, and she brought up that this isn't truly a remake. I agree to an extent. We get elements of Friday the 13th parts 1 through 4 incorporated in. The opening with Pamela that would be from the original. In this version, she is being portrayed by Nana Visitor. And then in this one, we actually have this group that involves Whitney, who is portrayed by Ragetti, and her group of people. That would be part 2. And then Jason is even wearing a sack on his head at that point. So then he ends up confronting Donnie. That would be part 3, where he finds his hockey mask. And if anything, this is borrowing more from the final chapter, so part 4. I do think where I'm going to go next to explore first would be that we have Clay, portrayed by Padalecki, looking for his sister, which is a character that would be very similar to Rob in part 4 as well. It isn't directly redoing this, but there are elements. So then we have Jenna, portrayed by Danielle Panabaker, as she could be seen as a Trish character helping him out. This is using the premise of many of the installments where people who are not from the area, they're coming out for a fun weekend when Jason shows up, and it's a good formula that works. So I'm going to break away from the comparisons, but I like what this one is doing. I'll tread lightly to not spoil things, but this is an interesting thing that is explaining why Jason can teleport. It works for me. It's kind of funny because of, I'm going to leave it right there, but it's just something that, it's interesting that he is killing a local like Donnie. There's a correlation as to why, since it's the same thing that he attacked Whitney's group for, as there is marijuana in the area, and Donnie's been stealing it. That's what Whitney's group was there to do, at least some of their members were. I don't hate this idea that Jason wants to be left alone. People are invading his territory, so he kills them. I'll also say here that Mears makes for a good Jason with his imposing size, so credit there. I will then say, if you know me, and with slasher films are not my favorite genre anymore, for me to be a fan, you really need to have good kills or characters. I do think this does well with both elements, to be honest. I remember seeing this in the theater, and then that original group that comes to the area, it plays well with expectations there. We have this like Wade character who is portrayed by Jonathan Sadowski. He's annoying, but he's distinct. We also have his buddy Richie, who is Ben Feldman. He's funny. We actually get to see the Amanda, who is Richie's girlfriend here. She is portrayed by America Olivio. She's topless, so that segment sets the stage well. It's from there that we meet our true characters that we follow. I like Clay's reason for being here. I believe that Jenna is fed up with her boyfriend of Trent, who is portrayed by Travis Van Winkle. He's also another one. He's the worst. He's a jerk too. So I'm open to, that makes it Jenna to leave the cabin. Trent has control issues, and that makes him where we want to see something bad happen to him, at least I did. Then his buddies of Chewie, portrayed by Aaron Yu, and then you also have Lawrence, portrayed by Arlen Espareta, and then they also have friend here of Nolan, who is portrayed by Ryan Hansen. He's fine. He's actually dating Willa Ford, and her character, and this is Chelsea. Yeah, she's the singer. Then we also have the character of Bree. She is portrayed by Juliana Gill, something like that. We get to see her and Chelsea topless. And then an interesting element here is that it's a bit sleazy while not going over the top. Let's then discuss the acting performances. Padalecki has a good look for the lead. He's a bit wooden in his performance. I don't need him to dazzle me for a film like this, though. Panabaker is solid as his counterpart. Rigetti works in her role. Van Winkle, Sadowski, and Hansen work in their roles. Being more like the ones who you don't necessarily like, they're kind of annoying. Yu and Espareta steal the show as the secondary characters for me. Ewell, Ford, and Olivia are all gorgeous, so they work together for what was needed. Mears works as Jason, and the rest of the cast is kind of rounded this out. The film then explores some themes here of corrupted nature, rusted vehicles and machines out in the woods. Jason's movements possibly suggesting evil taking root there. You also have a little bit of class conflict arises as city visitors invade nature, and Jason acts as a protective gatekeeper with whom the locals avoid, leaving him to his own devices. Family loyalty is also central. Pamela sought revenge for Jason, and then Clay is searching for his sister. There's a connection made here between Whitney and Pamela as well. Jason in this version is depicted as a calculated survivalist hunter. I don't hate that. Then over to the last part would be filmmaking aspects. This is well made with good cinematography and framing that effectively capture the isolation of the cabin and lake. Establishing the lack of cell phone reception was a nice touch. The brutal kills were framed well and appreciated, featuring a good variety with minimal, non-ruinous CGI. Now, the fitting soundtrack, though not outstanding, serves its purpose. Something else is an improvement is despite its runtime of around 100 minutes, the kills are at good intervals and it's paced well. So in conclusion, this 2009 entry stands as a strong action-packed installment that successfully synthesizes elements from the first four films of the original series while still carving out its own identity. It manages to balance the slasher requirements, memorable kills, attractive and distinct characters, with a cohesive premise and imposing portrayal of Jason by Mears. While not a perfect film, it's solidly paced, effective use of isolation and clear homage to the franchise's history make it a recommended watch, especially for fans of genre and the series. It's a good film to put on while you're looking for a fun, visceral horror experience. So my rating here, I actually give this one a 7.5 out of 10 this time around. Then I have one episode here of The Twilight Zone, the original run. This is going to be, according to IMDb, is Season 5, Episode 25, and it's The Masks. This was directed by Ida Lupino. It was written by Rod Serling, stars Robert Keith, Milton Selzer, and Virginia Gregg. This one is dying millionaire Jason Foster invites his greedy Boston heirs to a Mardi Gras party where they must wear the mask that he has custom made for them or else be cut off from their considerably large inheritance. So that man who is bedridden and is the one that he is talking about giving them the money is going to be portrayed by Keith. He's Jason, of course. And then he has, I'm not really necessarily sure how everybody is fully related here. I'm assuming it's actually going to be that Emily Harper is Virginia Gregg. That's actually his daughter. And then she's married to Wilfred, who is portrayed by Milton Seltzer. And then she has two children who are Paula, portrayed by Brooke Hayward, and then Wilfred Harper Jr., who is Alan Suze. And then there's also a doctor here of Dr. Samuel Thorne, portrayed by Willis Boshi. So Jason is ill in bed. The doctor wants to know how long he kind of wants to know how long he has left to live. He wants to at least make it to midnight, and the doctor says that says shouldn't be an issue. So Mardi Gras this evening. He has things that he wants to do here, and then this is where the family shows up, all their kids and everything like that. And then everybody's kind of excited to see him pass, and they're not really doing much to kind of hide that. They're all kind of despicable human beings. Now, Emily claims that she's always sick. Now, he scolds all these children and grandchildren. Paul's upset about, being here. And then he hands out these masks. Now, he's told them that they have to wear it until midnight, and they start to complain and everything like that. I kind of saw where the things were going to go once the massing every one of them, he actually gives a backhanded comment, but he actually means kind of the opposite of everything he's saying. And I think that's kind of cool here. But if they want their estate, they need to do this. And I love kind of what they do here. We're really kind of seeing how the true self from inside and how these masks have power to kind of bring that out and everything like that. It almost makes it where no matter what's going to happen here, they're always going to carry this on their face. So my rating then for this one, I rather enjoyed it. One of the better episodes I've seen is going to be an 8 out of 10. Then I'm going to end this out with the last 3 episodes of Season 2 for Wednesday, and then Chapter 6, Episode 6, whatever you want to call it, is going to be Woe Thyself. This one's directed by Angela Robinson, and then they're all kind of written by the same people and whatnot, but an encounter with a spirit from Nevermore's past gives Wednesday and Enid a new perspective on one another and puts one of their classmates in danger. So this one's kind of interesting here, because what ends up happening is that through her grandmother, Wednesday, who is Jenna Ortega, learns about how she might be able to get her second sight back, but she needs to go to this grave and needs to recite a certain incantation that's actually written on it. And this actually brings forth Lady Gaga, who is portraying Rosalind, I think that was her name. I just lost it. Yeah, Rosalind Rotwood. And then things end up happening here where if she doesn't complete what she's doing here and ends up getting interrupted, then there's going to be like a trick that's played, and this one's a little bit of a Freaky Friday episode. So it's kind of fun here to play with, is that we actually get to see how good of actors that Ortega as well as Emma Myers are as they get flipped. And then, so they're trying to navigate different things. They're messing up each other's lives, but there's actually, what they're kind of getting at here is that the different things that they do for each other ends up helping everybody. We also get to see something interesting here is that Morticia, who is played by the ever so lovely Catherine Zeta-Jones, she can actually see the spirit guide that Wednesday has, and that's Principal Larissa Weems, portrayed by Gwendolyn Christie. And then there's also, we got some of the stuff with its other story here with Francosa and her whole family here, Tyler and everything like that. They are trying to get rid of their hide side, and then this actually kind of plays back in with Slurp, who's actually, we kind of learn more about him. And there's something here with a werewolf that doesn't look great, because we also know that Enid, because she is an alpha, that if she turns on this full moon that's supposed to be believed this night, then she could be stuck like that way forever. I think this season started picking up around here. I end up giving this episode an 8 out of 10. Then the next one is Woe Me the Money. This one is directed by Tim Burton. And then this one here is As the School Gala Looms, Wednesday digs up the dirt on Dort. Enid tries not to wolf out, and Morticia engages in a battle with Wills with Grandmama. And this one here is, like I said, we learn more about Dort, and it's actually kind of interesting is that he ends up becoming more of a villain. My problem here is I feel like this is a little bit too little too late, and that is he is portrayed by Steve Buscemi. But we actually kind of get some interesting things here where we learn more about this Gideon Serling guy and kind of how he got that name, how he kind of got involved with everything. He is portrayed by Casper Van Dien. We also kind of get a little bit more here with the character of Bianca Barclay, portrayed by Joy Sunday, as well as her mother. It comes back into play in this one. She's Gabrielle, portrayed by Gracie Goldman. Wednesday's vision has actually changed, so now instead of Enid dying, it's actually going to be one of the Addams family is going to be the ones that are, kind of thing. This is kind of just building up to this final episode here. This one kind of had me and Jamie pretty intrigued. I gave this one as well an 8 out of 10. And the last episode here is going to be This Means Woe, episode 8. So this one here is once again directed by Burton, and when the buried family secrets are unearthed, Wednesday must race against time to prevent a dark prophecy from being realized. So Enid changes to help Wednesday, might be stuck in that form forever. I know we were kind of building up to that. I wasn't sure which episode that actually happens in. And then we also get to see this whole kind of plan playing out. Now, Slurp actually is real. I realize his name is, I believe it's Isaac Knight. And then we actually kind of realize here something, that Thing comes back into play, and that's, the hand being portrayed by Victor Dorobantu. And I think this one's kind of interesting with some of the things they do. Everything kind of comes together. Things get revealed. Things also get resolved. I enjoyed that. I'm kind of curious to see where things are going to go from here. And I know this one is, in this episode and the last one, Dort kind of gets exposed on some of the things. And this season definitely kind of wraps things up fairly well. It does sound like Nevermore is actually getting shut down. So I'm kind of curious, because I believe this is already renewed and everything going to have another season. So we'll kind of go from there. So I had fun with it. This one actually got better as things went on, so I did appreciate that. And so far, I give Wednesday the first 2 seasons, combining my ratings across the board, I give it an 8 out of 10. So that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
Call me when you get there.
I will.
Stop. Don't make eye contact. It'll give her an excuse to give safety advice.
Could you imagine if we got pulled over?
We're not getting pulled over.
We'll just invite the police to the party.
I
think you have a leak in your radiator.
Our car is giving us issues, and we need a place to stay for the night.
Oh, you don't want to stay here?
We don't really have a choice. Well, guess it's time to start the slumber party!
You're bleeding. It's not my blood. Check all the windows. What is going on? Now! No matter what he does, we are ready. Russ is alive and killing.
And for my first featured review here is going to be Slumber Party Massacre from 2021. This is directed by Danishka Esterhazy. It was written by Suzanne Kiley. This is starring Hannah Gonira, Francis Sholoto Douglas, and Mila Rain, while also featuring Alex McGregor, Renzi Tiana Vessels, Rob Van Vuren, Jennifer Stein, Shaylene Bennett, I think about how you say that name, Mazali Baduza, Michael Lawrence Potter, Eden Classens, Nathan Castle, Richard White, Braden Byes, Richard Wright Firth, Arthur Falco, Reem Kosa, and Jane D. Wett. This is a slasher comedy horror film that is from a co-production of South Africa and the United States. This is currently sitting on a 5.1 on IMDb and a 2.8 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being Dana and her friends are going for a weekend trip after their car breaks down in the very same town where her mother once fought the driller killer. She and her friends come face to face with the man who haunted her mother's life for the past 30 years. So Dana is being portrayed by Gonira, and this is a film that I remember when it came out. I assumed it was going to be bad, but to be honest, I heard reviews were being more positive. What made me move this movie up my list here was that I thought it'd make a good featured review here for Women in Horror Appreciation Month. Our director and writer are women, plus all of our lead characters are as well. This doubles as an Odyssey Through the Ones watch, and, finishing out the franchise for me as well. So let's do some feature notes, and I'll start with our director here, Esterhazy. She has came up previously with the film Match, so I've now seen 3 out of her 10 films for 30%. She also has 7 shorts. Not horror, I've seen Level 16. She's done it 4 in genre, and I've seen 2 for 50%. I have not seen the Banana Splits movie or Killer Body Count. Then we have 2 assistant directors. First is going to be Kathy Poole. She's done this for 3 movies. First that I've seen, everything she's done is genre. The other 2 being Slay and Invasive. Then the other is going to be Tosh Montlake. They've done this for 2 motion pictures. First that I've seen, only 1 in horror. Then to our writer of Kylie, she's done this for 4 features. Second that I've seen, all in genre. I've seen this and Leprechaun Returns. I've not seen Killer High, and she's attached to something called Buzzkill with all capital letters, which is not released yet. Moving to our cast, first is going to be Gonira. She's been in 3 films. First that I've seen, only 1 she's done in genre. Other than this would be Spell. Then her co-star of Sholoto Douglas has been in 10 works. First that I've seen, has 1 other one that is in horror of Hag. And last I look at here is Rain. She's been in 3 movies. First that I've seen, and the only one she's ever done so far in the genre. So, let's jump in this movie then, and we start with a woman walking briskly through the woods. She comes to a vehicle and gets something out of the trunk, and she's spooked by a guy. So the woman is Trish, portrayed by Beduza. She is spooked by her ex-boyfriend of Chad, portrayed by Falco. Now, she is here with her friends, as is he. He's trying to apologize for cheating on her and wants to get back together, but Trish isn't interested. She's on a girls' trip and wants him to leave. Now, returning to the cabin, the friends act out slumber party cliches, dancing in pajamas, baking brownies, kind of getting a little bit risque, but not going over the top or anything like that. But they also have cookies that the owner left them. So Chad is seen peeping through the window, and he notices somebody else doing the same exact thing as him, and this turns out to be Russ Thorne, portrayed by Van Vuren. And then Russ is wielding a large drill, begins killing the friends, starting with Chad. Now, Trish is the last survivor. She fights back, knocking him into the lake, and he is presumed dead, but the body is never recovered. So we then shift to the present, where we are seeing Dana Devereaux is listening to a podcast about the incident while she's packing. Something interesting is that her mother is Trish, this time being portrayed by Bennett in the older version, but this ordeal has scarred her. She doesn't leave the house often. She's worried about Dana going on a similar trip like she did. She pushes in hopes that her daughter will cancel. That's not the case, and then we see her leave with her friends of Mauve, portrayed by Sholoto Douglas, Beanie, portrayed by McGregor, and Ashley, portrayed by Vessels. They hit the road. It is during the trip that they make an interesting discovery. They have a stowaway. Alex, portrayed by Rain, is the younger sister to Mauve. Now she's tagged along. They don't figure it out until they're too far to turn back. It's decided that she'll just kind of join them for this weekend. They run into another issue, though. They have car trouble. It sounds like their radiator needs a new hose in order to fix the problem. The group goes to a local store, and it's run by Kay, portrayed by Stian. Now, they inquire about a place to stay, and she just so happens to have a cabin. So then the group settles in, unknowingly actually mirroring the events of 30 years ago. The arrival of... Actually, there's a little bit more to that unknowingly, but the arrival of John, portrayed by Michael Lawrence Potter, and Matt, portrayed by Claessens. They saw Alex out on the dock, they interrupt these women's plans. When the men knocked, though, the group all produced weapons, torn between their plan and warning the guys. Alex also finds Dave, who they met him at the store or at the gas station. He's the one that told them they needed a new hose and everything. He's portrayed by Richard Wright Firth. Now, the gas station, he's from the gas station. He, found dead in his truck out in the woods. Survival becomes a struggle, complicated by misinterpretations. So that's really my recap action of the characters. Where I want to start is that this is a fun reimagining of the original film. It's paying homage to that one along with the sequel, which I do appreciate. Something interesting to go along with that is it seems like the director wanted to cut out all the elements that Roger Corman put in the original to help make it sell to, both men and women. Esterhazy ramped up the female gaze as a commentary against the male gaze that we normally see in slasher films like that. So some of this works while some of it not so much. Now the film has a clever take on the original trilogy. With this cold opening mirroring what we got in those, what we get here is later mirrored even more when Dana and her friends arrive at this cabin, which is deliberate and effective choice. Subverting expectations, the girls later watch the guys' slumber party. The only nudity in this one is actually a male shower scene, which is a welcome deviation from the norm of these types of movies. I mean, I'd always, never am mad about seeing, female nudity, but I do like, being a little bit more equal here. As a slasher film, the practical effects for these brutal kills were appreciated. I did see a complaint of CGI in another review. I didn't necessarily notice that. Outside of enhancing things, that was the best use for me. The original cinematography helped hide any seams. The large cast, mostly for cannon fodder, is what is desired in the subgenre. The film is well paced. The cold open quickly leads to the kills, and the 90-minute runtime is perfect. Slasher films aren't my favorite, so what they did worked in that respect. There are elements that don't also work for me. I do think that this goes a little bit over the top with the meta nature that they're doing with some of their jokes and some of the dialogue in this movie, and how people kind of talk in real life. It doesn't necessarily mesh. It doesn't ruin this by any stretch, but I just think there's certain things that were said and done that I feel like it makes it feel like a movie and less like we're actually kind of watching events play out. I understand we are watching a movie, but I do like a little bit of that realism when possible. So it could have reined it back in a bit, and I think it would just work better. Other themes to explore here would be the burden of survival that has crippled Trish, causing her to project onto Dana, who seeks to break the cycle. The film satirizes toxic masculinity with the drill as a clear phallic symbol, connecting to Russ's killings and the themes of blaming the victims. A vital theme of female solidarity, which aids survival and deconstructs the trope of women bickering and splitting up. These are incorporated well, in my opinion. So the acting is generally over the top with these tropes. Gonira is as strong as a determined lead, reflecting the theme of breaking cycles. The rest of the group, Charlotte Douglas, Rain, McGregor, and Vessels, they work well. Van Buren's portrayal of the killer is effective. Stein, Bennett, and Baduza's fill their role adequately. Notably, the male characters that we get here, like Potter, Claessens, Falco, and the others, they're a little bit underdeveloped, a reversal of the norm for female roles, so I give credit for them subverting stuff there. Overall, the acting just kind of suits what the film kind of needed for its requirements, in my opinion. So I'm going to do some trivia here that I found. The red guitar that Sean finds is in reference to the Driller Killer guitar drill in Slumber Party Massacre 2 from 1987. Sean is being portrayed by Castle. Every Slumber Party Massacre film has been written and directed by women. Most of Russ's dialogue is lifted directly from the original film. His wardrobe and mannerisms are also very identical. I didn't necessarily notice that, but I've only seen that one once, and it's been a little while. Breeny's Space Baby shirt is a reference to Kim's shirt in the Slumber Party Massacre from 1982. Premiered on Sci-Fi Network on October 16th, 2021. In an edited form, since the network doesn't show uncensored films or shows, the unedited version appear on Blu-ray and streaming services. The pillow fight sequence is in reference to Slumber Party Massacre 2. Shout Factory obtained the rights to 270 of Roger Corman's Concord New Horizons library titles and opted to remake this one, hiring Esterhazy to direct, with Kylie hired to write the script. Production began in Stellenbosch, South Africa in March 2021. Filmmakers initially hoped to include cameos of actors from the first 3 films, but the COVID-19 pandemic delayed principal photography and scheduled to take place in South Africa. After several months of quarantine, the crew was finally allowed to proceed with filming, but because production resumed at the height of the pandemic, before rapid tests were readily available to the public, travel restrictions prevented anybody who wasn't a citizen from participating in the production. Our director, who is Canadian, is the only non-South African member of the crew. To prepare to play Russ, Van Vuren watched clips from the original film and saw an interview with Michael Villia. That was who played Russ in that original film, to get an understanding of how he approached the role, and he's generally praised on it. I agree. I praise him for what he did there. Van Vuren originally auditioned for the role of Dave, who was portrayed by Wright Firth, before getting the role of the killer himself, Russ. Cameron Scott was considered to play the role of John, and it ended up going to Potter. Scott and Potter appeared in a 2019 short film, Jaw, and 2020 feature film, Triggered. Potter reached out to the 2 actresses of the original to prepare for the role of John, in essence, the male equivalent of a Scream Queen. In part, this takes place in 93. The song the girls are dancing to, Candy by the Wild Cards and Daisy Chain, was not released until 2021, so that I can overlook it. This made its television premiere the same day that the screenwriter got married. Potter shot his scenes to 3 to 4 days while also working on a TV series and South African remake of the television show kind of thing there. This is a second film to both feature Russell Crowe, who voices one of the podcast hosts, and Potter, who plays John. They also were in Triggered together. Then there's some kind of references here to different kills on how they were kind of done things there. There's a little bit of subtext here that 2 of the characters might be having some lesbian feelings towards each other. There's actually a pretty decent body count here. There's a reference to Psycho 3, another reference here to Psycho. So some pretty good stuff there. But in conclusion, this 2021 reboot is commendable and self-aware slasher that succeeds in updating a notorious franchise by centering the female gaze, subverting classic genre tropes, and offering a fun, bloody ride. While the meta-commentary occasionally borders on being too stylized, the strong themes of female solidarity, the effective pacing, and the commitment to practical effects make this a standout entry. It serves as a respectful homage to the original while offering a modern satirical critique on the genre's history, making it a definite recommendation for horror fans. So my rating here, I actually gave Slumber Party Massacre 2021 a 7.5 out of 10. I'm not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily think there's anything deeper that I want to delve into there, so let me go ahead then and get you over the trailer of my second featured review.
We will have grief counselors available if any student needs someone to talk.
You're the new girl?
Whoa. Is that a part? No.
Can you translate any of it?
To talk, it can also mean to...
Summon the dead.
Go for it, babe. I dare you.
Do it. I think I'm gonna pass on the whole ghost summoning death whistle.
Listen, you guys hear that?
The day you are born, so is your death. If you hear the whistle scream, dying is not a choice.
Hello? We were told the markings said, summon the dead.
The markings read, summon your death.
Our future death is hunting us. We need to find a way to stop it.
Death is unstoppable.
I'm not letting it get you.
We are running out of time.
What if I don't want to die?
Then you shouldn't have been born.
And for my second featured review here is going to be Whistle. This is technically from 2025. It looks like it was doing some festival stuff, and that is the reason for that coming out last year, but getting its wide release here this year. And this is directed by Corin Hardy and written by Owen Egerton. This is starring Daphne Keane, Sophie Nélisse, and Percy Hine White, while also having here Nick Frost, Jahalil Swabi, Ali Scovabai, Sky Yang, Mika Amundsen, Michelle Farley, Stephen Kalin, Conrad Coates, Lynette Ware, Christine Shaley, Dina Pino, Isaac Smith, Vicky Kim, Cameron Gordon-Norris, and Carson Dervin. Now, this is a body folk, monster, psychological, supernatural horror film that is from Canada and Ireland. This is sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and a 2.6 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: a misfit group of unwitting high school students stumble upon a cursed object, an ancient Aztec death whistle. They discover that blowing it and the terrifying sound that it emits summons an evil that hunts them down. So this is a film that I first heard about on the Dreadcast. It was brought up as a film in the horror genre that was coming out soon for kind of something fun they were doing over there in January. So if you haven't checked that out, I would recommend going and giving that a listen, as I was on there, of course. But I've since heard others in the community bring this up with mixed feelings. Seeing this was playing at the Gateway Film Center, I was leery to see it. I decided to check this out and determine if this was going to be a featured review for the podcast. Then there was another release that really kind of caught my interest. I was going to go ahead and just kind of discuss some of the elements that worked for me. So let's start here then with some featured notes. I'll start with the director of Hardy. He's helmed 4 features and 2 shorts. I've seen 2 now. He previously did The Nun, which I've seen. Everything else that he's done is in genre. I've just not seen The Hollow. And then there's something that he's attached to here, The Lure, which has not been released yet. Then to shift over to our writer here of Egerton, he has done this for 7 films. I've seen 2, both in horror, with Mercy Black being the other one. 6 of his works are in genre. I have not seen Bloodfest, The Axe Murders of Basilica, or Follow. Now, there is one that isn't finished as of yet, which is Untitled Home Invasion Film. Moving over to our cast, first is going to be Keane. She's been in 9 movies. I've seen 2. Not horror, she was in Deadpool and Wolverine. This is her first horror film. She has one coming out later this year, it looks like, called Night Comes. Then her co-star of Nélisse, who has been in 23 motion pictures and 1 short. I've seen her in 2 now, both in genre. They're the only ones that she's done in horror, with the other one being 47 Meters Down, Uncaged. Then I'll look at Yang. He's been in 9 features and 3 shorts. I've seen 2. Not horror, he was in Tomb Raider from 2018, the one with Alicia Vikander. This is his first that he's done in horror. And I also want to give credit here to Nick Frost. He's been in 55 films and 8 shorts. I've seen 8 of his things. Not horror, he would have been in Tomb Raider, the same one that was in with Yang, Snow White and the Huntsman, and then a borderline films I would is Hot Fuzz and At World's End. In genre, he has 8. I've seen 3. I've seen Shaun of the Dead and Grindhouse. I have not seen Get Away, Slaughterhouse Rules, or Crazy House. So for this film here, we started a basketball game. The player that we're mostly focused on is Mason Horace Raymore. He's portrayed by Kalin. He is friends with Dean Jackson, portrayed by Swaby. Now, the game is on the line, and Horace is one of the best players here. We see there's something in the crowd that draws his attention. He ends up hitting the game-winning shot and then flees into the locker room while his teammates are celebrating. It is there that he breaks a ceramic skull that's in his locker. He thinks that he's gotten away from whatever is coming after him, but then he's attacked by a burning person in the shower, and his teammates and coaches and everything find him in flames. So I believe we shift 6 months into the future. It is here that we meet one of our leads here of Chris Willett, portrayed by Keane. She is moving in with her cousin and his family. We actually never meet the aunt and uncle. I can overlook this film stuff. It is what it is. But her cousin is Rel, portrayed by Yang. He's into comic book character and refers to himself as a nerd. This is the first day at school, and it sounds like Chris used to visit. So she was friends with Grace Browning, portrayed by Scoveby. And I'm actually going to jump over to some trivia here. Is that there's a bunch of characters that have horror movie last names. There's going to be one that'll come up here for Wes Craven, and I guess there's one that's William Friedkin. I didn't catch that one, or I wasn't necessarily looking at the character names, but there's also a brand of cigars in this named after Annie Muschietti, and then of course Grace Browning is named after Todd Browning. So Grace and Chris might have met back in elementary school though. Now we see Chris go to her locker. This used to belong to Horse. This draws Dean and Tanner Church, portrayed by Amundsen, to intimidate her. Now, watching on is Dean's girlfriend, who is Grace, and her friend Ellie Gaines, portrayed by Nélisse, and I'm assuming that's probably Courtney Gaines is the nod there. Chris won't back down and knees Dean in the groin. She is seen by Mr. Craven, there it is, portrayed by Nick Frost, and gives him all the attention. It doesn't appear that anybody cleaned out Horse's items from the locker, though. Chris finds this old-looking container at the top of her locker. Inside is a whistle that has a skull face. She takes it with her, almost blows on it, but then the bell rings. Now, something to include here is that there's some stories going around the school about Chris. The rumor is that she's a recovering drug addict who killed her father. There is some truth here, but it's also stretched. Dean calls Chris out in detention, claiming that she has something to smoke drugs from. She brings the whistle to Mr. Craven, who is intrigued by what he sees. He allows everybody to go home early so he can research more about this item. He does assign them to write a 5-page paper as well. There's something not right going on here, though. Craven blows on it, and we see the window of his his classroom cracks, and then he's dead soon after. Rel ended up stealing the whistle before they went home that day, and he went back in for his comic book that he left. He takes it over to Grace's house, where they're all supposed to meet up to write this paper. Dean goads her into blowing on it. Now, the noise that emits is painful. It then becomes a nightmare as they're followed by an entity. What we'll learn, though, is what is after them is something from their own future. So let's leave my recap and introduction of the character. Where I want to start is that this film has good and bad elements. What I will say is that most of the issues do not ruin the overall product. This does take liberties to get the story moving and avoids providing context as to why this group of people are friends. It is speeding up the process to get people, to get them to come to this for... It's getting this group of people together and then just kind of progressing the story from there is what I think I'm trying to say here. I do appreciate that. Let's then start to look at our main character of Chris. This film does well in setting the stage about her through Dean. Grace scolds him for what he said. Rel and Ellie don't like it either. Chris doesn't correct him, so a majority of this, we think that she may have actually killed her father. The truth is sad, and I can see why she's harboring guilt. She's now closed off, wearing bigger clothes and just isolating. The blowing of this whistle forces her to open up to see if she wants to figure out what to do and survive. Keen works well enough in this role, special credit to how annoyed she always appears to be constantly. Her resting face definitely looks very angry. I do then want to shift over to discussing this Aztec death whistle. First off, the design is cool. It looks like an artifact. I'll tread lightly here, as I'm not going to say that whoever hears it and kind of what this entity coming after them necessarily is. There does seem to be a little bit of stuff that we learn a little bit later on as we have an expert who gives us a little bit of an info dump. But an issue I have is, why would anybody ever blow this whistle then? I did see a buddy tear a scene apart where Chris finds it in the locker, takes it out of the case, and almost blows it, like I was saying. We hear whispering, so I get the idea that there are some forces influencing events, pushing her and others. I can work with this concept, so when Mr. Craven and Grace do it, there's a little bit more sense there. Where I will then go next would be exploring the lore of this item. Mr. Craven is where they start, since he seems to be a history teacher. They then decide to seek out Horse's grandmother of Ivy, portrayed by Fairley. What we end up learning here is that she's wealthy, and she's the one that actually brought it home from, I don't know if it's Central or South America. She's an expert who helps fill in the characters' need to know things, there. She's cryptic, so that helps. There's a segment I come to expect. It makes it feel a little bit generic, but you get them in a lot of these type of movies. I'm going to explore issues that I had, though. The character of Noah Haggerty, who is portrayed by White, is a young adult youth pastor who strangely sells drugs to his congregation. He serves as a temptation for Chris, suggesting a relapse after her overdose. I felt this villainous role is a little bit too obvious as to why we're here, especially I don't necessarily know why it has to be somebody who is... I am very critical of religion. It feels a little bit heavy-handed to have him be this youth pastor doing stuff like this. It makes a little bit more sense why he is so villainous as to what they end up learning as a way to stop the curse. Chris's early crush on Ellie also felt underdeveloped. I find it implausible that while in high school that Ellie works in a hospital as a front desk person. There are some minor criticisms. I acknowledge that I might be just nitpicking. Then to finish out with the story, it explores the inevitability of mortality and the concept of fate, forcing this group to fight for survival against a unique personification of death. Protagonist Chris must overcome the emotional paralyzation and face the weight of her past to determine the quality of life. The diverse group breaks high school hierarchies. The conflict is sparked by Taurus sin, bringing back a powerful, unhonored artifact with severe consequences. Let's then go over to the acting performances. While not outstanding, they're sufficient. Keen was fine as this brooding youth, and her arc with her dark past worked. Neelise was a fine counterpart with her rapid soulmates connection. Does feel a little bit forced to me. White served well as his villain despite issues with the writing. Swaby Scoveby and Yang completed this main group. Frost and Failure were likable in their smaller roles, and Kaylin helped to set the stage. The supporting cast served their purpose. So all that's left before I have one little piece of trivia after that is going to be filmmaking aspects, especially the cinematography and framing. They effectively capture the blue-collar, steel mill town setting, which makes the presence of an artifact ironically amusing. The CGI heavy and brutal deaths, they're conceptually hard to do without. They're notable. I thought they actually looked well enough. The pacing is inconsistent. Feels both too long and rushed at times, particularly in a setting up like The Group and The Curse. We have a reoccurring theme here that's reminiscent of The Entity, which I actually appreciated that song. So when it starts like banging in there, like I thought that was well done. So while filming the carnival scenes, it was freezing cold and began to snow covering the ground. The snow was edited out in Final Cut, which kind of crazy there. So in conclusion, this is generally entertaining entry into a supernatural teen horror genre despite its flaws. While the film benefits from a compelling premise centered on an ancient Aztec death whistle and a strong lead performance from Keen, it struggles with underdeveloped character dynamics, especially the forced romance between Chris and Ellie, and a somewhat generic approach to lore exploration. The film successfully tackles themes of morality, fate, and the weight of the past, leveraging a unique monster concept and effectively bleak setting. Ultimately, it's a watchable, if imperfect, film that successfully delivers on the horror elements its premise promises. Despite its R rating, I could see this as a potential gateway into like stronger entries for a younger viewer. So my rating here then for Whistle, I give this a 6.5 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily think there's anything deeper I need to delve into there. So let me go ahead and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jittery an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in. And Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash. Fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcasts found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that's going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So, yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And then for my next episode here is going to be my final episode for this season of celebrating Black History Month, and I'm going to be checking out first Welcome Home, Brother Charles. So this is a blaxploitation film from 1975, and then I'll be pairing this up with Twisted. The only reason that this kind of works out from what I could tell is that this stars, or co-stars at least, Daojiman Housu. This is that 2026 release from everything I've been seeing. I might double check that. If I have to pivot, I will. But then I'm also going to have here my scouring through the sixes rewatch is going to be Alice, Sweet Alice. And then I'm going to watch some other mini reviews. I'm not really necessarily sure what I'm going to commit to as of yet, but I will have, a full episode here for you and everything like that. So I don't think there's anything else I need to say on this episode except that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending